All right, what's up, guys? We're going to be doing part 3 today of the Atlantis series. Oh, this is going to be on the location of Atlantis. So, Plato says that very clearly that they came forth out of the Atlantic Ocean. Okay, in front of the Strait of Gibraltar is an island larger than Libya and Asia put together, which to the ancient Greek mind would be some portion of North Africa and Anatolia, respectively. This island of Atlantis is the way to other islands, then, and from these you might proceed to the whole of the opposite continent, which is truly a boundless continent. Okay. For this sea, which is within the Straits of Heracles, is only a harbor, having a narrow entrance, but that other is a real sea. So a lot of people speculate that Atlantis was in the Mediterranean somewhere, perhaps Santorini or Thera, but you can clearly see he's saying they came from the Atlantic Ocean, which he's contrasting with the Mediterranean. So obviously, Atlantis can't be in the Mediterranean unless you just want to put words in Plato's mouth. Now, on this island of Atlantis, there was an empire which had rule over the whole island and several others, and over parts of the continent. And they, as we already saw, they invaded Europe up to Italy and Egypt, or Africa up to Egypt. And of course, later, the island of Atlantis disappeared into the depths of the sea, right? So we can rule out the Americas because he's already referencing the Americas as the opposite continent. We can rule out anything in the Mediterranean because he's clearly saying they came out of the Atlantic, which he contrasts with the Mediterranean. And then this is another clue, right? So Atlantis was divided up among the 10 sons of Poseidon, who were 5 pairs of male twins. And the first pair, the main king, the eldest, was named Atlas, after which the empire and the island of Atlantis were named. But his younger twin brother was named Gadira, or Gadirus. So the younger twin brother had for his portion the extremity of Atlantis near the Strait of Gibraltar up to the part of the country now called Gadira, after the name of that region. Okay? Now, up to the part of the country now called Gadira, the country called Gadira is Cadiz in Spain, right? You can see here on Wikipedia, we've got the etymology of Cadiz. It comes from Gadira, named after Gadirus, one of the kings of Atlantis here. So he ruled the extremity of Atlantis near the Strait of Gibraltar up to the part of the country now called Gadira, which is Cadiz. So the extremity of the island toward the Pillars of Heracles up to that part which is named Cadiz, right? So it sounds like Gadirus ruled this little peninsula or promontory reaching eastward toward the Strait of Gibraltar, right? The extremity of the island near the strait up to Cadiz. So, based on this interpretation, it sounds like Gadirus ruled this peninsula and perhaps any islands over here toward Cadiz, and maybe Cadiz itself, potentially, if it's named after him. But I've seen people, there's a group of documentary makers who saw this passage mentioning Gadirus, and they just ran with it and said that Atlantis is right off the coast of Cadiz here. But as you can see, there's no geological feature that would be an island the size of Asia and Libya combined off the coast of Cadiz, right? During the Pleistocene, anything on that coastal shelf would have just been connected to the mainland. It wouldn't have been an island, let alone an island the size of Libya and Asia put together. So really the only feature in the Atlantic Ocean that could be Atlantis, right, that could be the size of Asia and Libya put together, is this Azores Plateau feature right here in the middle. Okay, it's in front of the Strait of Gibraltar. It's the way to other islands, which is the way to the opposite continent, right? It's sunken. It's not above water right now. It's below the water, right? So that fits. We already ruled out the Mediterranean. We already ruled out the Americas because that fits most closely with the boundless opposite continent. Other locations that people cite are Antarctica. And the whole Antarctica is Atlantis theory hinges on Earth crust displacement. So Charles Hapgood put forth this theory of Earth crust displacement, that cataclysmic events could cause the crust of the Earth to slide over the mantle like the skin of an orange, and that this could change the position of the land masses very rapidly and catastrophically. And Colin Wilson and Rand Flemath wrote a book called The Atlantis Blueprint, which was building on Hapgood's crust displacement ideas. And they thought that a portion of Antarctica would have been further north, situated in the Atlantic, prior to one of these Earth crust displacement events. Now, it's a very interesting theory, and I do find parts of it compelling. But I just don't think there's quite enough evidence to verify or falsify one way or the other. Like, we just don't have enough research that's gone into the Earth crust displacement theory. It's kind of an old, outdated theory. And although I think there's some truth to it, I mean, there's just not enough serious, rigorous research into it to say one way or the other if Antarctica was in the Atlantic. So I think we can safely put that one to the side for now. And one of the other main locations that people try to say is the Eye of the Sahara, right? So there's a few reasons it can't be the Eye of the Sahara, because Plato clearly says that Atlantis sunk beneath the waves. The Eye of the Sahara is above the water, and it hasn't been beneath the water probably in millions of years, right? Certainly not in the past 10,000 was it underwater. It's also not on an island. It's just in Africa, right? And it's not submerged. It's also the wrong size. So the radius of the city of Atlantis, as Plato gives it, from the center of the central island out to the last ring of water is about 1.55 miles. This line segment here is 1.6 miles, so you could see the whole ringed city of Atlantis would fit very snugly inside the smallest ring of the RICHAT structure, the Eye of the Sahara. So all the ring action should be going on over here, but we see it out here. Now, to be fair, Plato also says that beyond this outermost circle of water, 50 stades out, there's a stone wall, right? And that ends up being, if we do the math, at 607 feet per stade, then that puts the stone wall at 7.3 miles from the center, which actually does kind of line up with the bottom rim here of the RICHAT structure. But again, all this ring action should be over here. This is where all the rings of land and water are, in the middle here. And then this would just be like an outer city, like suburb. You would expect it to be more or less kind of flat out here. Not only that, but it seems by all accounts to be a geological feature, not a constructed type of feature. So one thing people will say is they'll try to argue that, oh, the RICHAT structure would have been an island during the African humid period, which the African humid period was around 12,600 to around 3,000 BC. You can see here some extinct rivers that would have existed during the African humid period, especially this one called the Tamanrasset River. So sometimes people will look at this and say, oh, well, that kind of cuts off North Africa. You could kind of say that's an island. But it's a big stretch, right? This river coming up to here it doesn't really cut this off and turn it into an island, right? It's still connected to mainland Africa. Not only that, but the RICHAT structure is actually south of this Tamanrasset River. It's somewhere down here. So it's not cutting anything off. It's not turning anything into an island. Okay? So the RICHAT structure was never an island, and it's not submerged. It's not the right size. I just don't think it's Atlantis. And then some people will use these passages from Herodotus and Diodorus Siculus and be like, oh, he's calling these people Atlantes that live here. Well, we already saw in video number 1 that we have actually the movement of genes into Africa here around the time when Plato said the Atlanteans are invading Africa, right? So it makes sense that this region has a legacy of that invasion, right? The Atlas Mountains here, obviously named after Atlas. And also the people here, the Berbers, the Amazigh, have these haplogroups that came in when Atlantis was supposedly invading North Africa. And they have continuity with the Ibero-Maurusians who were here in the Paleolithic, right? So it makes sense that Herodotus is calling these North Africans Atlantes, and Diodorus Siculus calls them Atlanteans, right? So he's talking about the Atlas Mountains. The people of this country call the mountain the Pillar of Heaven. These men get their name, which is Atlantes, from this mountain. It is said they eat no living creature and see no dreams in their sleep. Okay. He's saying the ridge reaches as far as the Strait of Gibraltar and beyond them, which actually kind of checks out, right? So the ridge of the Atlas Mountains runs beyond the Strait of Gibraltar. It's going out west here, past it. Diodorus Siculus says, Atlas received as his part the regions on the coast of the ocean, and he not only gave the name of Atlanteans to his people, but likewise called the greatest mountain in the land Atlas. So the people and the Atlas Mountains are named after Atlas, the first king of Atlantis, for whom the empire of Atlantis and the island of Atlantis are also named. They say also that he perfected the science of astrology and was the first to publish to mankind the doctrine of the sphere. And the Atlanteans say that the gods were born among them, which is also interesting. So again, they're not saying Atlantis itself is in Africa, but they're saying that the people who live near the Atlas Mountains are called Atlantes, and then Diodorus Siculus, who writes after Plato, calls them Atlanteans. So he might be influenced by Plato. Pliny the Elder says, there is another island situate over against Mount Atlas, being itself known by the name of Atlantis. Okay, so again, against Mount Atlas, from a Greek perspective, or a classical, Mediterranean perspective, against Mount Atlas, would be like opposite the Atlas Mountains. So again, that fits with being in the Atlantic here. And he makes another comment that's a bit neutral about Plato's narrative, neither affirming nor denying it. The sea has totally carried off certain lands, and first of all, if we are to believe Plato, for an immense space where the Atlantic Ocean is now extended. We also have Proclus writing a commentary on Plato's Timaeus in the 5th century AD. That such and so great an island once existed is evident from what is said by certain historians respecting what pertains to the external sea. According to them, there were 7 islands in that sea, in their times, sacred to Proserpine, aka Persephone, and also 3 others of an immense extent, one of which was sacred to Pluto, another to Ammon, and the middle or second of these to Neptune. These things Marcellus writes in his Ethiopic history. So he's reporting on the opinions of Marcellus. And we can take a look maybe in another video, but Proclus mentions that in his day at least, so in the 5th century AD, there's kind of mixed opinions on whether Plato's narrative of Atlantis is real. Some people say it is, some people say it's made up, and other people criticize him as just stealing the story from the Egyptians. But we can get to that in another video. I just want to do a quicker one a little bit on the location here. And again, as you can see, the only location that really matches all the details is the Azores Plateau. And again, I defer to Randall Carlson's work on this. So definitely check out Randall Carlson if you haven't. He's done a lot of good work on the geology, the paleoclimatology of this and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, thank you guys for watching.